Dr. Michael Blachly came to the University of Florida Performing Arts in 2000. In his over 35-year career in the arts, he has served as Director of UCLA Performing Arts, Vice President and West Coast Director of Sales for Columbia Artist Management, Vice President of Bill Fagan Attractions, Assistant Vice President and Director of Performing Arts for the 1982 World's Fair, Director of the Campus Center at the University of Hawaii, Director of Activities at Colorado State University, and Program Director at the University of Tennessee. Dr. Blachly holds a BA in Speech and Theater Psychology from the University of Northern Colorado, an MA in Communication Theory Sociology from Washington State University, and a PhD in Education Psychology, Higher Education Administration from the University of Tennessee. Welcome, Michael.
Mark, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's go back 12 years ago to 2000. Where were you right before you came to Gainesville?
I was finishing 14 years as director of UCLA Performing Arts. It had been a wonderful, and continues to be a wonderful program. They've just done a great job for the city of Los Angeles. Had an opportunity to come to the University of Florida, develop the program, move it forward, take it in directions that the university had, up till that point, kept sort of low-key. They really hadn't expanded the program, and asked if I would be willing to come in, develop it, take it forward, diversify it, internationalize it, and let the program grow, and I thought it would be a great opportunity.
How did you feel about the cultural shift from LA to Gainesville?
People say, boy, it must have been a real culture shock, and I say, put that in the present tense.
Right.
It's still a culture shock. But one of the best things about doing what we do in terms of providing cultural outlets for members of our community is count on the people in the community to meet us halfway. Los Angeles, with a population of 8 million people, you can do almost anything and have a public ready for it, willing to come, willing to support, and be a part of it. It's taking a while to still build some of the diversity in our audience base here. The good part about this community is it's a very cosmopolitan community. It's an intelligent, intellectual community, and a real willingness to take chances. It's just not quite the numbers that we had to work with in Los Angeles because of the size.
So, Michael, when you got here 12 years ago, you obviously took a look at what had been done in the, I guess, 8 or 9 year history that preceded you, and what did you find, and what did you decide to bring to the seasons?
Mark, the program that had been in place was everything solid and established on a very, very good foundation. Coming out of the Florida Arts Celebration, as the building opened and became part of the community, they built a solid Western European tradition with symphony orchestras, with recital, with dance, some good jazz, Broadway theater, and family. So there was nothing wrong with the program. What I was able to do, and it was in part having come from Los Angeles, was widely diversify and internationalize what we were doing, reach to some of the parts of the globe that had not been part of our stage here, and start building some new performances, commissioning new works, creating some premieres around artists that were just getting their voice or their signature. We went from a relatively small program dealing with the community size and rapidly grew it to where we could start building new audiences. So the foundation was here. It's a solid work that has a history steeped in the traditional performing arts.
Right.
But what I've been able to do is just really sort of take the walls further out and establish some new territory with some very innovative and progressive artists coming in to take their stance.
Were you able to take advantage of relationships that you'd already built in LA?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it was what allowed me to really come to some artists and say, well, the first project we did here was creating the work called Eros, A-E-R-O-S.
That was amazing.
And it was 3 North American choreographers with whom I'd worked: Moses Pendleton, who is now the artistic director of Momix, David Parsons, who had his own Parsons dance company, still does, and Danny Ezralo, who was an outgrowth of his company ISO, along with the two co-creators of Stomp, Luke Cresswell and Steve Nicholas, I was able to open the North American tour of Stomp in 1994, ran it for 4 weeks, got to know those guys, had worked with each of the choreographers, so all of a sudden when this opportunity came together, I convinced them to come to Gainesville to build a piece as opposed to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to build on some relationships.
I would think there would be some advantages to coming to North Central Florida if you're working on a new piece over Los Angeles even.
Without a doubt. You come into a place where the cost of a hotel room night is around $100 as opposed to around $300. So if you're moving a lot of people in, your per diem on a daily basis, if you're giving folks $28 to $34 a day, goes a lot further here than in Los Angeles. Transportation getting to and from the theater, much more reasonable. We've got a professional, non-union crew, so we're able to work beyond the 8-hour time shift without going into penalties. So building a piece of theater from scratch here is a whole lot less expensive than having to do it in Los Angeles.
Now, am I correct? Are you in the midst of your 20th season now? Or?
We are just about to finish the 20th year. What we did is we took the calendar year 2012. The building opened January of 1992. So we took the 11-12 season and the 12-13 season to be able to use both halves of 2012 to really expand, which allowed us to bring back a lot of the artists that had been part of the tapestry of where we were as we got here, and build with some of the new artists that'll be the future.
You know, there is so much to talk about in this very short time period, but I know you've done recent renovations at the auditorium, and I think that's kind of an ongoing part of any performing arts center. What have you done lately at the center?
Well, the most recent addition in the Phillips Center has to do with some of our ADA seating. We've gotten a very strong structural chair that we're now using for the people that are in chairs as they come to the theater, a high priority need for us. We're just about to undertake doing the stage elevator, which 20 years later, the lift as it goes up and down, it can become part of the full stage, can go all the way down below level for the orchestra in a touring Broadway production or an opera. It can also come up to floor level and be seating. So it's been used a lot over the 20 years. It needs to be replaced. University Auditorium, we have replaced the seating in there. We have replaced the carpeting in there. We've redone the acoustics in there with some enhancements. Literally, the theater, as you know, is a changing organic environment where there's always something that needs to be done and definitely things that can be done.
I kind of go way back with the Performing Arts Center. When I was in a previous lifetime, when I was at the Hippodrome, we actually did the first live theater in the Performing Arts Center. We co-produced a production of West Side Story, and that was when the building was just built, and there were some real acoustic challenges, but I know you've done quite a bit of work on that as well.
We still have challenges. It's with today's technology, there's no perfect space for anything. So what can work for a symphony orchestra may not work for a jazz artist, may not work for touring Broadway, may not work for a rock and roll or an otherwise enhanced sound. What we find in the Phillips Center is it's a very bright room. So things like spoken word, some of our touring Broadway, we have to find ways of deadening some of the ambient space so that the sound doesn't bounce off the walls and you sort of have it coming back on itself and giving feedback to the artist, or you're hearing the same word twice in the audience. It's a challenge.
Tell me about the Squitieri Studio Theater. That wasn't there when it first opened.
It was not there. We had a space that was known then, as most theaters have, as a black box theater. And it was well used, but it was always sort of an understated space. We used it for storage when touring Broadway came through. We used it for a lot of our student performances. Used it for rehearsals in class with dance companies, but it never really had sort of a cachet where you could bring an artist and an audience together. It felt like the kind of place, if we could invest a little bit in terms of some seating, some drapery, enhance the lighting, that it would be the right place. So we now have this 200-seat jewel, and people are buying for events. They don't exactly know what it is, but they love the space. So they're taking a risk, saying, this is my kind of space. The artist and the audience are literally in the palm of each other's hand. It's a very intimate, very, very tight, good space for young artists. from that all the way up to like a Richie Havens or a Peter Yarrow, who are literally talking to their fans as though they're talking across a living room.
Nice, intimate space. Great place to see a concert like that.
Very much so.
Now, you've also got the University Auditorium. You do all the programming there.
With the exception of School of Music. They do their performances. All the public programs that go in are under our auspices.
And then you also have the center on Lake Alice.
Bauman Center.
The Bauman Center, yes. And then you also do a lot of the programming, don't you, for the president and the Athletic Association, and where do you find the time?
Well, I have found if you look at a 24-hour day, and if you can use 22 or 23 of them, you get more done than if you only use 12 or 13 of them.
So you're wasting an hour a day sleeping? Is that
every now and then? It's a challenge. I mean, as you know, there's nothing about the theater that's a 9-to-5 world, and there's nothing about a Monday to Friday. It's a 7-day. And many of our programs, when we're turning the hall around, we're going on a 24-hour clock. We're getting one company out the door onto the truck ready to roll, where we're having another one in queue ready to come in and bring things onto the stage. My first year here, the provost asked me if I would be a co-chair for the university's 150th anniversary. I said, why would you want me? I just got here. I mean, I don't know this. And he said, that's exactly why we want you to do this. A fresh look, a fresh eye. So I said, sure. So I co-chaired the sesquicentennial. And then from that, I did President Matchen's inauguration. From that, I did 100 years of Florida football, which was the largest single fundraiser in the history of intercollegiate athletics in our country. And it's just led to, and we did the reference back to Eros, the company that we built on our stage. I used them as the entertainment for the closing ceremony of the It's Performance That Counts campaign.
I remember that.
So it's just been a chance to take some things outside the proscenium arch and do some things that are a little bit differently, and I've had tremendous support from the community.
You also had a recent addition, I believe the donor's name was Fackler. Tell me about their addition.
The great thing about the Fackler foyers, Dr. Marty Fackler said, I understand that you don't have enough space in the lobby when you have a capacity house. I said, we don't. If we get good audiences and we don't have good weather, there's no place to put people. The audience is greater than the amount of space we have in the lobby.
Right.
So, well, what about these two spaces? We had 2 terraces on either side of the main lobby, but we never used them. It was either too dark, too cold, too windy, too wet, too hot.
There were 3 days a year where it was
exactly,
ideal.
they were perfect. And unless we knew which those 3 days were going to be, we still didn't get there in time. And so he provided us the seed money to enclose them. We got some support from the president's office, and then with the Cortellis matching funds, we were able to enclose both spaces with an atrium-type feel. So we still have, it feels very open, very airy, but we now have spaces for lectures, pre-performance discussions, artist receptions, intermission receptions. We have a youth theater class that now meets in there. It gave us the ambient spaces that the theater didn't have.
You know, Michael, one of the things that really impresses me about what you all do over there is what an amazing part of a student's education your programming is. It's one thing coming and sitting in class, and that's important, but to be exposed to the great art, international great art of the world is just so valuable. I know you do a very robust student internship program, and I know you also have a kind of a subsidy program for student tickets. Can you tell me about those?
Absolutely. Again, coming out of UCLA, there was a program there, it was entitled the Student Committee for the Arts. And they basically were funded through the student activity fee, part of the student's tuition. And they allocated money to purchase at discounted rate tickets for students, which basically they would scalp in reverse. They would buy tickets at full price, turn around and sell them to their peers for $10, $8, whatever it might be. I got here and I took the idea to student government, and for a while it was a hard time for getting their head around what we wanted to do. A young lady who became their budget and appropriations chair thought this would be something worth doing and put us into their reserve fund to allocate for 1 year. Fast forward, we've now been made a part of their annual budget. They allocate, this year will be $122,000. We take that $122,000, and if you were an undergraduate or a graduate student, wanted to come and see the Capitol Steps, which is a $45 ticket, you could purchase a student ticket for $10. The subsidy makes up the $35, so that we're made whole to pay the artist. The students get this wonderful opportunity, and student government is providing a service to their constituents. We detail every ticket that's sold, the performance, the area of the house it was sold, how many were sold, and report to student government. We can give them daily, monthly. We are now to the point where we just do an annual report back, and they consistently give us the money because of the value. Your first point, I strongly, strongly support a student that's at the University of Florida in Gainesville who may have come out of rural Florida, could have come out of an urban center in Florida, but a chance for them to see an artist that's here from China,
right,
or an artist from Australia, or an artist who's coming from the European communities, and learn about their culture in Gainesville at the Proscenium Arch enhances what they're doing in terms of the classroom.
Right. What are the internship opportunities available to send?
We have internships in the administrative area. We've got 2 in our area right now. We've got one that's in marketing that's serving as a writer. We've got one in our design department. We, in the past, have had another one in our education department. We've had one in our technical. If there's an interest that a student has, we will try and craft an internship around it so that they can come in and get real-time experience on a day-to-day basis, learning what it is to be in this field, should they choose to pursue it.
Michael, tell me about your relationship with the local producing either theater or dance or whatever. What do you have relationships with the local organizations?
Our facility serves as one of the best conduits for the relationships. We do everything we can to maximize their time in the theater, provide them the technical support we can, give them the best we can for the number of hours that we can charge them to keep their time down.
Right.
The work is done with Dance Alive National Ballet, Dance Company, Gainesville Ballet Theater. O2B Kids has a program, Gainesville Community Band, Alachua County Youth Orchestra, Gainesville Chamber Orchestra. The one group that we don't do a lot with, as you mentioned earlier, is the Hippodrome State Theater, in that they have their own space.
Right.
I was asked to attend one of the funding committee meetings some few months ago and was asked, is the Hippodrome, do you perceive it as your competition? Are you in competition with them? And I said, absolutely not. We collaborate with the Hippodrome. Our competition is the individual's home entertainment center, or whatever will keep them inside their house. Our purpose is bringing people together, bringing community together, getting people side by side, sitting in a theater, exchanging ideas and exchanging thoughts. And the Hippodrome is every bit a part of that tapestry as we are.
Tell me about, I want to go into a little more detail about, I remember the days before you were here, and I agree that the offerings were fairly traditional. Just the first thing that would come to your mind that a performing arts center should offer. Did you come with just a deliberate philosophy? I guess what I'm asking is, when you sit down and you look at this season coming up, how do you move the pieces around the board to decide how international you want to be? Do you have diversity goals, or do you just look at the whole universe of things that are available and kind of play it intuitively? How does that process work for you?
It actually is, in many ways, like a set of scales and balance. I try to make certain that we have the anchor of the Western European tradition, that we do have some recital that's strong, we've got chamber that's strong, we've got orchestral presenting that's strong. But on top of that, we're reaching well beyond what the tradition is. We're looking at what's happening globally, that a traditional musical ensemble from Ghana is different from a traditional musical ensemble from London. Both are valid, both are real. And how do we begin to bring them together so that our stage becomes the talking point?
Right.
And I try and keep the balance so that if somebody says, I'm really looking for something new in dance, something I haven't seen. So we are commissioning a dance company next year to come in and create a new work using the tradition on which modern dance was built. But it would be different than if we just booked them with their repertory company.
Right.
So it's really a matter of trying to reach, and then let the artist enter the dialogue. What would you like to do different from what you have done? Where do you see your company going, your career going? Where do you see the art form going? What can we do to lead that line? When we had Todd Rundgren and the postmodern quartet Ethel, we did the world premiere. They came in and they worked on it here, the Tell Me Something Good program. Tell Me Something Good was written by Stevie Wonder, recorded by Rufus and Chaka Khan. Well, Todd Rundgren took it from the 70s and created this wonderful, we're now decades later, Tell Me Something Good. And it was a real positive look at the future. So it's giving the artist a chance to use their voice.
Are you having fun, Michael?
I love it. I love it.
It sounds terrific. Something I recently heard about, because I went to your website, which is a very it's a very good website. It's a lot of information there, and I love the video stuff you're doing about the shows that are coming up. So we'll be putting the website address up on the show as we're going over it. But I saw that you're doing. I'm going to get the term wrong probably, but simulcast. You've invested in some great video equipment. And you're doing those things that I guess some movie theaters are doing these days. Right. Tell me about that.
We invested in a high-definition projector. We're finding that more and more dance companies are using projection as a part of their set design, scenic design, because it's easier to travel with visuals than it is full physical sets. So we thought, as we see more and more of that, and we're finding that there are companies who are putting a lot of their work to film, that we should have a way of projecting it in a way that's equal to the artist being on stage. So we found a way to enhance our sound system. We found with this new HD projector that we can move a step forward in terms of providing arts on film, enhancing a dance company's work with film, a symphony orchestra using visual projections around what the music is. We're just learning about what our overall capacity is. I think the future is really wide open. I think we're going to be doing a lot more with it.
What caught my ear is I'm a big fan of the classics, and I saw you were doing the Rolling Stones concert.
Girls.
Yeah.
1977 concert from Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, and it had not been seen on TV or in
Nope.
the movies, or.
And there are a couple of others we're looking at. There's a Doors concert, which is one that, with due respect, you can still see the Rolling Stones. 50 years into it, they're working. The Doors are no more. So to be able to get this Doors concert with Jim Morrison becomes an opportunity to have a living history. And I think that there is an audience for it. I think we're going to develop it as we find our footing.
We're about out of time, but there were a couple of aspects of your career that I found particularly fascinating, and one that wasn't even in the bio we talked about, but I know from good sources that you had a relationship with Three Dog Night. Is that correct?
Had a relationship with Three Dog Night, had a relationship with Elvis Presley, had a relationship with James Taylor.
Now, was that in the Columbia Artists days?
No, it was actually when I was working as a presenter. The interesting thing about Three Dog Night, I presented them in a 13,000-seat arena in Knoxville, Tennessee. They were coming in from Canada on a Sunday in a snowstorm. They got through. None of their gear made it through customs. None of their gear made it on the plane. So at 5 o'clock on a Sunday night in Knoxville, Tennessee, a community of 250,000, I'm on the phone with every music store in town getting those guys off from their Sunday dinner to say, do you have a Hammond B3 organ? Can I get a Fender Stratocaster guitar and amp? They're going, what? We loaded an entire set of brand new equipment onto the stage for Three Dog Night so that the audience in Knoxville, Tennessee would not miss the opportunity. And it was all done by community coming together and saying, sure, we can make this happen.
And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Huh?
It was one of those where if you can do this, you can do it.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the 1982 World's Fair. Tell me about your involvement there. Where was that fair? I forgot.
That one was in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Knoxville.
It began on May 1st and ran through October 31st. The international expositions are 6 months by decree. We averaged 35 events a day, did over 3,200 events during that 6-month period of time, from 4th of July stadium show with Johnny Cash, Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, the Cash family, to the London Symphony Orchestra, to Red Skelton, to the Houston Ballet doing an entire full-blown Cinderella, to Van Halen, to atmospheric mimes, jugglers, and magicians. We had 7 different stages on the fair site. We had house bands for it. Riders in the Sky became my house band for the Elm Tree Theater. And but basically it was a creation from nothing into something for 182 days straight.
And you were in charge of all the logistics and getting all those folks?
It's where I met my wife, and she was the person who was doing the master calendar, and that was the day before they had calendars like we know them today, electronic calendars at airports, etc. She was working the first beta site for an electronic calendar that they then had video monitors around the fair site that would tell you what was happening, at what time, on what stage, and when there was a special week, whether it be India's week or China's week, what was happening with that. So she was doing the programming electronically of what I was bringing physically to the site.
Wow. And was this when you were working at the University of Tennessee, or when you were working on your doctorate? Or?
I had finished my doctorate. I had finished there. I left Tennessee, went to Colorado, ran a concert bar there, and did many of their arts programs and stadium shows. Went to the University of Hawaii, had a 4,000-seat open-air amphitheater, another concert bar there, and actually the local stagehands union, the lighting guys in the local union in Knoxville called me in Honolulu to say, would you consider coming back to run the World's Fair? They need somebody who knows this place, and we're hoping to have somebody who had experience in the market. And I said, sure.
So it took a World's Fair to get you to leave Hawaii?
It's just about what it was. And people say, why did you ever leave? And it's like, I think I just got there too early in my career. Today, I'm not sure I could be drawn away. Then it made sense.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I think you've just done amazing work since you've been here.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mark, very much.
Remarkable addition to the community. And,
Thank you.
Best of luck on the future. Look forward to seeing what you have for us next.
Join us anytime.
We used to write letters to each other a lot, and it was intimidating to talk to him sometimes because he just seemed so isolated by himself.
She started talking about how she wishes that her life was over and she wishes that she was never born.
So I knew he had depression, but I didn't know it was that far.
Said something to me about killing himself.
Tell somebody, tell an adult, a counselor, parent, whatever.
You have to try and help them get help.
You have to take it seriously. You can't assume that they're just saying it because the risk is too great.
It's a hard situation because you do risk making that person very angry and losing their friendship.
It would have been horrible for me if she never talked to me again, but I'd live with it because I know she'd be alive.
Definitely worth getting help, even if you think you're going to lose a friendship, because it's better to lose the friendship than the actual friend.